Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to BlizzCon 2013. And now, for your host, Zoe Geschwin-Pensky.
Hello and welcome! BlizzCon 2013, day 2. And it's early, but still, I hear you being pumped up already. Can I hear some noise? There we go! Oh boy, we got some really great stuff coming on that stage. Yesterday, we already saw amazing games pretty much on all those stages. But today, we're going to start the day with a special treat. Making its live tournament debut for the first time ever on such a big stage, Hearthstone! We invited 8 players to the Innkeeper's Invitational to play it out for even more fame and honor than those guys already have. And that's what we're going to see today to start it off. And for that, please let me introduce to you our casters, Total Biscuit and Kevin Nokke.
That is right, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to BlizzCon 2013. This is the Innkeeper's Invitational. I am proud to present it. I am Kevin Nokke, joined alongside by John Total Biscuit Bane. And man, how are you doing today?
Doing fantastic. Such a massive crowd right here for the inaugural Hearthstone tournament. As mentioned, first time ever played in a live stage.
That's right, and we started with 8 players yesterday. We did play out the round of 8 on the community stage, and we are left with 4 players. And we're actually going to take a look at the brackets here in just a second to set up our semifinals and finals that we'll be playing out. First up, we're actually going to start with Trump versus Artosis. Artosis advanced past Noxious 3-0. Trump went past Husky 3-0. And we have Wreckful versus Creparium for our second semifinal.
That is a stack of players. Possibly, I think it is the stack of players that people would have expected to make their way through. Day 9 was able to put up a good fight against Wreckful, the only player who went out in the round of 8 to actually take a game from his opponent. Everything else was a 3-0 sweep, which leaves us in a very interesting situation because we've only got to see one deck from each of the winners actually played out already.
That's right, and we've seen a lot of Paladins, to be totally honest, in those 3-0 decks. Now, the question we were asking ourselves before this is, are we going to see the same deck actually brought out? Do these players want to try and hold their decks for the finals, or are we going to see something brand new to try and catch your opponents off guard?
It's a good question. We should explain the format to those of you who haven't seen this. This is, of course, a relatively new game, still in beta, so we also have for it a relatively new format. This is, if you play StarCraft 2, perhaps you're aware of team leagues like the GSTL. This is a fairly similar idea. Each player has 3 different decks, each of a different class. To win the match, you must win 3 games. So it is a best-of-5 all-kill format. That means if you win, you continue to use the deck that you used in the previous match. The opposing player must pick one of their remaining decks to go against yours. And of course, we may see it go all the way to Game 5, by which it will be whatever decks are left will then go up against each other. As you'll also notice, the first game is a blind pick. So as you mentioned earlier, we may see the decks that came out yesterday come out again. There are certain edges to that. However, there are also disadvantages. Those decks have now been taken to pieces. Everybody knows, everybody's seen what's in them, and also seen how they're played.
That's right, and we mentioned before that we have seen a lot of Paladin decks, and curiously enough, even though that's what we saw of 3 of our combatants, Trump is actually the only one in our semifinals that is not running a Paladin deck.
He is not. As you can see here, this is Trump's setup. These are the 3 decks that he has available. Now, once one of these decks are eliminated, you will get to see that on the screen. Just to remind you, it will be crossed out with a large red X like so, at which point he will have to choose one of his remaining decks. His center deck there, the Druid, is what he used yesterday. And honestly, I'm really interested to see what comes out of his other 2, assuming he has to even use them.
Yeah, that's right. We've taken a look at the deck list, and obviously we're not going to talk about them too much until the decks actually come up, simply due to the fact that players will want to be able to hide some tech if they're able to make it into the finals with one of those decks remaining. And we can see Artosis' decks. There's a Paladin, a Warrior, and a Priest deck there. We did get to see his Paladin deck in full force. Once again, though, to let you guys know, when decks get eliminated, they'll be crossed off in red just like that. When a player has lost all 3 of their decks, they are actually eliminated from the tournament entirely.
Yeah, this is a single elimination format. That means no second chances. Once you're out, you are out. And of course, they're all fighting for the honor of getting to stand on stage in front of you guys and claim the rather magnificent trophy.
That is absolutely right, because they are just competing right now for honor and for fame. But I'm looking forward to seeing what these guys bring out. Taking a look at the deck compositions that we had seen before, though, we had seen different variations in those Paladin decks. Now, we had started off with, now bear in mind that the competitors had to submit their decks a couple of weeks ago, so the meta has changed a little bit, so you may see something that, like, well, I thought that had kind of gone out of the meta a couple weeks ago. Well, there's a reason for that. We do have one very interesting deck, though, that we saw for Kripparrian, which is a very aggro-based Paladin deck, which is very different than the other Paladin decks we saw yesterday, which honestly I think can match up very favorably today.
It seems to work pretty well, but of course there are ways to actually deal with that, and there's also a reason why a lot of players do not run that kind of deck, because it is extremely vulnerable to certain forms of big board clear. But Krip was able to get around that quite nicely. He, as everyone saw yesterday, was rolling a large number of weapons. He took 2 True Swords Champion and, more importantly, 2 Sword of Justice, which allowed him to play a lot of smaller 1 to 2 drop creatures, as well as rely on his initiates, which were coming through and dealing horrendous damage. And no matter how much clear was thrown at him, he seemed like he was always able to catch back up. And he was also able to empty his hand very quickly and then use Divine Favor to get right back into it simply by taking an awful lot more cards. And I mean, it worked incredibly well, I've got to say.
Yeah, that's right. For those of you who are unaware, maybe new to Hearthstone, Divine Favor is a 3-mana card that states that you draw cards up to your opponent's hand size. So with playing that more aggro variant, of course, you can throw out a lot of creatures very quickly, start maximizing on that Sword of Justice earlier on in the game, and then replenish your hand, as you had mentioned before.
We definitely saw some nice punch in that game as well, in the form of a couple of Sea Giants, which was a recent modification to his deck that will come out cheaper depending on how many minions are actually on the field. Works absolutely fine if you happen to be using a deck with a lot of little creatures in it. But what I'm hoping for here is that we will get to see a lot of series go all the way to Game 5, since we've looked through the deck list and some very interesting things to actually experience in there. And we'll try and keep things fairly basic for those of you, of course, who have not played the game. We will make sure to explain as much as possible as we go. And you will be able to see both hands as we switch between the screens. So you will have an idea of what's going on with the other player. You will not simply have to watch one side and then not really be able to see the other.
All right, guys. Well, it looks like we're about ready for our first match. But first, I have a question. BlizzCon, are you ready for the semifinals of the Innkeeper's Invitational? And let's hand things over to our host, Zoe.
Thank you very much, guys. We are indeed ready, and for that, we now have to get the 2 first players here on stage. So I will start with the one which almost does not need an introduction in terms of Hearthstone. Everyone who knows the game will know him. So please, welcome to the stage, Trump! And what Trump is to Hearthstone, his opponent is to StarCraft 2. So please, a warm applause for Artosis! I love the team shirt. It's great. That's just great. All right, those 2 guys are going to play the first match of the semifinals here in the Innkeeper's Invitational. So let's ask him a few quick questions before we start. You guys have already been playing some games yesterday in the quarterfinals. Trump, some would say you had the easy road going up against Husky. Yeah, don't love. We all know everyone said that. But we're gonna inquire about that. Trump, tell us a little bit about how it went against Husky. I mean, you went 3-0. Seems fairly convincing. Was it as easy as it sounded?
Well, you know what? Husky brought a lot of decks, the like of which you've never seen before. So I have to say that it was an experience, and I had to quickly come up with strategies on the fly against him. So, fun games.
Some games. I wish I would have seen them. So Artosis, you had Noxious, also went 3-0. Have you had similar experiences to Trump's?
Yeah, it was a little bit weird, the decks that he brought out, and I thought there were like a few play mistakes, so it went easier than I anticipated.
All right, so guys, now we have 2 big names. You're known to be into these kind of games since a while now as well, so people would have probably seen you in the finals whatsoever. Same goes, of course, for you. How confident are you going up against Artosis here?
Well, I'm up against a strategic mastermind. I've practiced hard, so I'm going to try my best. That's it.
All right, so your words to your opponent here?
Well, I prepared a lot for this tournament, so if I get reasonable draws, I think I can do fine and make it to the finals.
Well, we definitely hope for good games. So, gentlemen, please shake hands. We're going to get game one rolling here in the semifinals. Innkeeper's Invitational. Hearthstone here at the BlizzCon. And for that, let's hand it over to our casters, Kevin Nocky and Total Biscuit.
Thank you very much, Zoe, for that. And I'm a little disappointed. I was expecting a fist fight to break out on stage. Trump is known as a very aggressive individual.
Yes, tons of personality all over the top, and really likes to throw down again. No, he doesn't actually at all. He's a very mannered player, and actually, honestly, a great representative of the game, to be totally honest. So.
Absolutely true. A very careful player as well, actually, and we did see it in his play and in his deck construction for the most part. I don't want to talk about the rest of the decks before our players are able to put on their soundproof headgear, but what we saw from his Druid was a really, really standard safe deck that's pretty much good against everything. It'll swing against everything pretty well, but it has no particular specialities.
That's right, and it can't really upset any deck that it's necessarily mismatched against. It's just very good at being able to cover kind of all the bases. Someone throws an aggro deck out there, well, I've got enough small pieces and enough utility I can keep it down. Someone runs a very heavy control deck, well, I've got enough board presence that I can usually sneak on through and do some good damage. But as we mentioned before, Trump's not bringing a Paladin deck to this. And while we obviously aren't going to talk about the deck lists themselves, we can talk about the classes that both of these individuals have. Artosis has brought a Paladin deck, a Warrior deck, and a Priest deck to the table versus Trump's Druid, his Mage, and his Priest.
What I've got to say is I really do hope we get to see Artosis' Priest deck come out, because it's very, very unusual, and we'll get a chance to talk about it if it gets to that point. His Warrior deck is just all-round nasty, and I'm looking forward to seeing that get played. We've only seen one Warrior on stage so far. It was, of course, the Pirate deck of Husky, which sank rather quickly, unfortunately. He charged right off the plank, but regardless, it was an interesting opportunity to see a Warrior deck played, and I feel that the Warrior deck of Artosis is significantly stronger than that, and has a really, really good shot of dealing with his opponent. But if we want to talk about strong decks, Artosis' Paladin deck just absolutely demolished Noxious yesterday. He really did. It just went right through him over and over again. He looked safe the entire time.
I think Artosis hit on something that was pretty important, though. Artosis didn't make many mistakes when it came to play, and he was able to capitalize on Noxious very efficiently. And he always made the right choice in terms of being able to have the most efficient combo ready, whether it was throwing up a Sword of Justice and making sure that he was able to pump out a lot of little guys against some sort of a more control-y deck, and he gained board presence that way, or whether it was just really nice, solid combos behind Argent Protector and things like that to give early minions Divine Shield.
Yeah, and he played that extremely well. It was basically a minor variant of your standard Divine Paladin deck that a lot of you, if you have the game, have probably run into more than once. The idea of Divine Shield after Divine Shield after Divine Shield, making it very, very difficult to remove minions, meaning that you get some guaranteed damage, and you get favorable trades all the time. And it's really all about value when it comes down to Hearthstone. You've heard the term value bandied around so much, and of course Trump is the ringmaster of the circus of value. But regardless, it's all about the idea of, if I've got more cards than my opponent, if I've got more minions on the field, and if I can make my minions worth more by taking, say, either 2 of his minions or something along those lines, then eventually I will be able to win outside of very extreme circumstances.
All right, folks, well, it looks like we are ready to jump into our first match. Right now, it is going to be Trump versus Artosis, and I cannot wait.
All right, this is going to be amusing. Now, I would like to see, of course, who is going to bring out what first. There we go. Trump versus Artosis. The two scariest men in the hall right now, as you can see. Look at those dead eyes on Dan right there.
Oh, man.
Staring directly into your soul.
All right, well, we got to make bold predictions, John, so what do you got? Lay it on the table.
I wouldn't be entirely surprised to see Trump bring the Druid out as a starting play. Like that.
There you are, and actually it's going to be both the decks that we know from these two players, so clearly they're trying to hide something right now. As you can see, Trump running with his Druid, Artosis running with the Paladin. Let's take a look at the opening draws. Starfire, Keeper of the Grove, and Novice Engineer out there for Trump. Obviously he's going to ditch a couple of those cards there. Starfire is a little bit too high mana cost right now to be able to run.
Yeah, I mean, this is a nice hand really for both players. They're not going to have to mulligan too much. I'd maybe keep hold of the Keeper of the Grove because that deck that he's running doesn't have a huge amount of silence in it. It's always nice to have that. Even though you can't play the Keeper of the Grove early on, it's nice to know that it's in your hand.
Yeah.
You don't have to toss everything in your hand to hope that you get 1 and 2 drops. The Novice Engineer, obviously, I'd hold on to that. He is going first, which means that he will have to wait till turn 2 to deal with it. But now, of course, they're going to mulligan. And we're going to see actually a large mulligan from both players here. For those of you who don't know, you're able to throw away cards from your hand and gain other cards, but you can only do it once and you have to accept the second result. So the Imp Master's going to stay, the Novice Engineer is going to stay, and then we're going to see entirely new hands aside from that. Sylvanas Windrunner and an Azure Drake, and
Okay, so this is actually interesting because as you notice, Artosis actually got rid of his Argent Protector because he only had an Imp Master, and throwing a Divine Shield on Imp Master doesn't make a lot of sense necessarily. It's going to be constantly doing damage to itself, etc. Artosis is now going to be on the play, and he is going to go out and throw out that first coin knife juggler.
Absolutely. He goes second, so that means he gets the coin, which is a single mana boost, which allows you to kind of catch up. It's designed as an equalizing mechanic between going first and second. He plays a knife juggler first. He has a second knife juggler sitting in his hand right now. However, top deck of the Claw right there, which I would expect Trump to just go right at him with that, but he's going to go Novice Engineer instead. That's okay too, because he knows there's not going to be enough knives coming out to actually kill that Novice Engineer immediately. Also gives him a card and the draw there. And I think we will see a second Knife Juggler coming out. There it is. So that's going to throw a knife. Every time a minion is played, a knife will be thrown by the Knife Juggler. You have no idea what it's going to hit, but of course you can make a prediction. All right, 2 Knife Jugglers out in the field already. Claw available. Second Novice Engineer is a possibility as well. And he's going to play the second Novice Engineer. Will he decide to Claw here?
I hope he does, because 2 Knife Jugglers on the board right now is too much damage to be able to deal with, even with the deck that we see Trump bringing right now. So he's just going to swing in for 1 damage to Artosis' face, make sure he takes out 1 Knife Juggler as well, and he weakens Artosis' board just a little bit while only committing card draw minions.
All right, so turn 3, here we go. Imp Master is a definite possibility here. It seems like the most logical play. Doesn't really need to worry too much about that. At the end of every turn, that Imp Master is going to lose 1 health and summon an Imp. Very nasty in a deck like this when you can buff those Imps, but a Sword of Justice isn't out in the field yet, so that's not going to happen. Another knife gets thrown out. That takes that down to 1-1 there. Nice, easy clear. I mean, Knife Jugglers in general trade very, very well, especially against weak minions like that.
Definitely.
So we're going to be seeing some nice damage coming out already. Artosis does have the slight lead in terms of health. Just bear in mind this. It seems nice to be able to do early damage, but there's a lot of decks that kind of burn out pretty quickly if all you're doing is throwing cards at your opponent and hoping for the best.
And I want to mention here that there were a couple of different plays for Artosis available there. Knife Juggler, because of the Imp that actually pops out at the end there from the Imp Master, will proc the Knife Juggler 1 more time. Unfortunately, it doesn't get that lucky hit on the Novice Engineer that would have gone down.
Hard to rely on that, really.
Yeah, it is, because he had a 33% chance, and that's not necessarily reliable. So he decides to take the play of doing a little bit more direct damage there. There were other possibilities. He could have swung into 1 Novice Engineer and then hoped for the 50% chance from the Imp that came out the end to completely clear his opponent's board, but that's very risky, and that's leaving a lot up to chance.
Yeah, you don't want to really be tossing coins at this stage of the game. All right, so for Trump at this point, he could go for the Shattered Sun Cleric, which would be a 1-1 boost to anything on the field. But ultimately, that still doesn't trade amazingly well while that Knife Juggler is still there. So I expect that he's going to Wrath something, and he's actually going to go after that and then knock that over. I like that a lot. That's a pretty good thing. Yeah, he knows that Novice Engineer is going to go down. He wants to get rid of that Knife Juggler. He does that. He's happy to use his hero power to clear that off the board. And now a lot of those threats are gone. He's taken a lot of damage in doing it, but that's reasonable. He is against a Paladin deck, not a big burst damage deck. He can afford to take some hits early on.
All right, Argent Protector's not really going to do much right now because there's nothing for it to adequately protect. Oh, and Artosis is actually going to go down the aggro route. That's right, so he just used his Blessing of Kings to give his Imp +4/+4. So he thinks that he's got his opponent in a situation where he can swing through and just do as much damage as necessary to finish him off.
Unfortunately, that would leave him in an awkward spot. There's a couple of ways around this, but he elects not to go for that. He's going to take yet more damage. He's going to take another 5 damage hit, which will take him down to 9. That's a little bit unpleasant to say the least. A silence is available in here if he wants to use it. Probably won't silence the Azure Drake. It doesn't matter too much. That +1 spell power is going to make a huge amount of difference. Argent Protector, definitely a possibility on that 5/5 Imp. Absolutely. I was perhaps worried about a Sylvanas Windrunner play capturing that Imp and turning it against him. But there we go, there's the shield. That's going to knock that out. Nice trade immediately for that. He doesn't even have to worry about taking damage. That pops the Divine Shield. Artosis in a really great spot already in this game.
That's right, and Ancient Allure comes out there for Trump, but unfortunately doesn't have enough to do. Doesn't have enough mana to use it right now, and he just decides to take out that 5/5 Imp. But that was still a very good card for Artosis. It got in 5 damage. It took 2 cards for Trump to be able to get that off the board, and that does build Artosis' advantage just a little bit. But now we're getting to that stage. Trump just needs mana. Once Trump gets enough mana, he is going to be able to flood the board with some very, very valuable creatures. He just has to get to that point first.
Yeah, he's got an awful lot of that. He does have the Ancient of Law there. That does have a healing ability, but generally you don't want to use it because it's not the best value. You can get some good card draw out of that. He's already sitting on a slight card advantage over his opponent, but his opponent's got a pretty decent board. All right, so what is he going to do? He could Avenging Wrath here. Probably not the most ideal thing, but if you're looking to try and rush down, that would pop the 4/3, and then it would do extra damage to his opponent. But what's his follow-up to that? He doesn't necessarily have one. So he's thinking about what he can really do here. He could use an Argent Commander to charge in and take out the other Argent Commander, taking the damage on the shield, which would leave him with 3 minions on the field versus 0. That's not too shabby.
Yeah, that certainly is a possibility. From Trump's hand before, he didn't have a lot of options to be able to get rid of those necessarily. And he is going to Avenging Wrath. So this is going to deal 8 damage to random enemies. We'll see where the 8 damage goes.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7... Oh, it misses that one. That's a little unpleasant, but he'll be able to trade out that initiate. Takes his opponent down to 8 here. This is an unpleasant situation because, of course, we know Artosis is sitting on a charge creature in his hand.
That's right.
So it's down to 6 damage. If he goes down to 4, then, of course, that Argent Commander is going to come out and end the game immediately. Trump needs to be aware of that possibility. But he's got this sizable card advantage. The question is, what can he do?
He saw this deck yesterday, so he knows the Argent Commander's around. He just took one out. So there are, I'm looking at his hand right now. Let's see, we got Shattered Sun Cleric, Azure Drake, Sylvanas Windrunner, Harvest Golem, Acidic Swampoos. Not a lot, though, that just comes on and makes an immediate board presence or clears the board. That Keeper of the Grove you meant before, or you said before, could gain him a little bit of health back, but it doesn't really help him long-term because Artosis can still get in and do a lot of damage. There's just not a ton of options for Trump. He is going to take damage next turn. Just a question of if he can survive long enough.
Yeah, I mean, he will be able to, he could get rid of that 2/2 there with the Keeper of the Grove using its ability to do 2 damage. That's a possibility. Ancient of Law is another possibility with a heal, but as we said, it's not a very good heal. It's not that great. Trump does not believe in Taunt, and he's now regretting that because having Taunt out right now would be great. There's the heal. It's a bit of a desperation play. He obviously didn't really want to do that, but he didn't have too many choices. Lay on Hands comes out for Artosis as if he actually needed any more health to begin with. It's honestly one of the reasons why a lot of players just don't take that kind of healing, because if they're doing well, they don't really need it. It's still card draw, which would help him in this situation.
I mean, that's what I was going to say. Once he gets to 8 mana, that is card draw available to him. There's not really a use for his Spellbreaker right now. Argent Commander gets in and does a little damage, but it doesn't clear the board appropriately. Consecration doesn't give him what he needs right now. Equality will prevent damage, but he doesn't need that. So what you can see is
he's going to have to Argent Commander and go right into it. He's actually going to rush down by the looks of it. And I like this decision a lot, honestly. That's a pretty good way to go for it. He's just going to ignore the Ancient of Law and go right for his opponent. And out comes the Chillwind Yeti. Again, these are all great creatures, but not in this situation. He is being rushed down. It's turn 8. He's already down to 5 health after a heal. If he hadn't healed himself, he would have been dead. So in this situation, if I was Trump, I'd be extremely worried because there isn't a huge amount he can actually do right now.
We could see a Keeper of the Grove silence on the Argent Commander, and then he could take that out with his 5/5 Keeper of the Grove. Or I'm sorry, his 5/5 that he has sitting around, and then also throw on a Chillwind Yeti just to get a little bit more board presence so we can continue to trade with creatures. But again, doesn't really have that great option that's just very obvious. You can see Trump right now just kind of doing math in his head, pointing at the screen. He knows things are pretty bleak right now.
Yeah, he wants to be able to get rid of everything from the board. Okay, Keeper of the Grove, what is he going to do with it? He could either do his 2 damage and remove the Argent, or he can ping off that Divine Shield from the Argent Commander there. It's going to be, well, I mean, if he's going to go after the Commander, it doesn't matter what he uses. It's going to have the same effect regardless. So he's going to dispel that shield, and then he's going to use his Ancient of Law to knock that out. That leaves it with 1 health. And he's still got 4 mana remaining. He armors up here, and he goes right for his opponent. He's left with an Ooze if he wants it, but
But the problem is that, I mean, anything comes in next. Well, honestly, at this point, if we see a true silver champion, exactly, he might as well put it on the board. But he's worried about if he has to hold that back for a true silver champion, maybe in a couple of turns or something like that, if he can stabilize.
If he can live for a couple of turns, I'd be quite surprised at this point. No, he is definitely in a lot of trouble. However, as we said before, these kind of rush down attempts can burn out because you become very reliant on the cards that come off the top of your deck, and if they're the wrong cards, then you end up stuttering and stumbling over yourself. So out comes the Ooze. He clearly didn't want to play that, but he needs creatures on the board right now. Another Spellbreaker, that's not really going to help Artosis at this point.
No, Consecration's not bad, though. It clears Trump's board because he can use his 2/2 and finish that off.
That's not bad. It'll also do 2 damage to Trump as well,
correct.
which, with the armor on theirs, it would take him down to 4 health, which would not be bad. But bear in mind, those 2 Archer Commanders, they're gone. So that charge possibility, that's not really a factor anymore. We should, of course, bear in mind, he's still got a Tyrian Forge Ring sitting in his deck. Just to be even more irritating, there is a legendary in this deck that could be extremely potent. All right, let's see what he wants to do. He's going to go for Equality rather than Consecration. Oh, he's going to go
Equality, then Consecration.
Yeah.
Boom.
Right. There we go.
And that's really good because that does 2 damage. It completely clears the board. He can swing in with his Argent Protector, get another 2 damage in, and now Trump has to clear the board, otherwise he's dead.
Yeah, 27 health to 2 right now. A Starfire comes out. That is not enough. Trump knows it's not enough. I mean, he'd have to burn a Starfire on a 2/1, which is the worst thing you could possibly do. It's a very powerful attack, and he's got to do it. He knows he's got to do it, otherwise he's not going to live. It does get him another card, which is nice. He can also armor up and then remove. He's going to play his Harvest Golem instead. So, 2 health remain. What's coming out from the top of Artosis' deck? It's a second Lay on Hands. If he's feeling very generous, he could heal Trump for a longer game here.
I don't think that's going to happen, but
it seems unlikely. Artosis is known as a competitive individual. Right, Spellbreaker. This is a good time to use it because then you just end up removing that. This is a nightmare situation right here for Trump. 1 health. It's highly unlikely that he's going to be able to pull out anything. Let's see what he gets. Another Starfire. That's not enough.
Well, I mean, he can Starfire the Spellbreaker, he can trade with one of the recruits right now, and then he can armor up and he can take another turn. So it's at least going to keep him alive, which is nice.
He top decks a Wrath. That's nice.
Good.
Okay. All right, that's pretty good because he'll be able to do the 1 damage, draw a card. So he maintains this sizable card advantage right here. And yes, he can clear the board. So Trump is going to remain alive on 1 health and possibly even armor up to go to 2.
Yeah, I think he will.
All right, well, we have a game on our hands. Trump is back in it for a while. If another Avenging Wrath comes out here, though, he can say goodbye.
Or a true silver champion. If we see that right now, that's just gone.
Master.
All right, he is going to stay alive for longer. I mean, Lay on Hands could potentially draw cards here in a bit because he doesn't need the health necessarily. I mean, getting back the 4 health would be decent. Looks like he's just going to throw out the Imp Master. This is going to give him 3 total creatures at the end of his turn. And that, again, is going to present Trump with some very difficult decisions.
We're going to have to see something like a swipe from Trump here to try and clear this out because even small minions right now will be able to handle him. A claw comes out. That's not what you want. I mean, it does get you 2 armor, which I guess is okay, but you don't really want to be swinging at anything at this stage. So Trump is going to start to do the math in his head and try and figure this one out.
Okay, so we can Dark Iron Dwarf and get the 4 damage onto the Golem and trade with the Imp Master and actually keep the Golem alive. Then he can claw up and he can take out another one of those minions and still retain an additional 2 armor with that and his hero power. So there are possibilities, but again, still no taunt. He's going to survive for another turn. He will get it. We're just kind of waiting on the true silver champion now.
Yeah, it's going to, even if he manages to get momentum back, it's going to take a very long time to kill Artosis because he's sitting on 2 Lay on Hands. So he is not going to die anytime soon. Mega buffs coming out right here. That is a 5/3 Silence Harvest Golem. There's the Claw, there's the 4 armor. He's now effectively on 4 health right now. Takes out the Imp Master, gains huge board control, and is now right back in the game.
All right, things are getting a little crazy here. Artosis just giving a silent nod as he respects his opponent there. We have seen a few well plays going out from both these players so far.
Commander! Top decks the kill. Well, that was pretty well played by Trump to try and come back into this, but Artosis with the coup de grace. Down it goes.
Artosis takes game number 1 here against Trump. That does mean that Trump's Druid deck is now eliminated, and he is going to be forced to choose between his Priest and his Mage deck.
Excellent. Now that means we'll actually get to see his Priest and his Mage deck. I'm interested in both, certainly. His Priest deck is a little bit nasty. It's got an awful lot of Let's just say, if you've played ladder and you've run into priests, I think you know what you're going to expect coming out of that.
Yeah, I'm running a deck with a few of those cards right now, and it is
so
gross. So let's hope we see a priest, because we can talk about that a lot. He does have another mage deck. The names of the decks, for those who are curious, his mage deck is entitled Add Fuel, and his priest deck is entitled What's Yours Is Mine.
Which I believe is enough for people to figure out exactly what's in there. Yeah, there is an awful lot of control that he can basically steal minions from his opponent, which is extremely annoying. He didn't go all in on the idea of it. There are other ways to do it. You could throw a couple of, say, gnomish mind control techs in there. You could maybe grab some mind visions and things like that. But he elected not to do that because he actually, wants to win games as opposed to play a theme deck. But he has 5 forms of mind control in that deck.
Yeah.
He's got his 2 mind controls. He's sitting on a Sylvanas Windrunner in that deck as well. And he's got 2 Shadow Madness.
That's right.
Lesser played card. It allows you to grab an opponent's minion for 1 turn and then attack immediately with it.
And only if that minion has 3 or less attack. So it's a very specific card, but it can be used effectively in some situations, especially if you're going up against an opponent that has a lot of either Wind Fury or minions that have utility, stuff like that, or good Death Rattle effects as well.
Yeah, I mean, you could have even thrown Sukabal Shadow Priest in there as well, which is the minion which ends up taking the lower health stuff out of there. But you've also got your pretty standard priest removal in his deck as well, a couple of Shadowwood Pains, Shadowwood Death, and things like that as well. Of course, our players are wearing extremely heavy-duty soundproofing gear, so they will not be able to hear what we're saying whatsoever.
That's right.
But they will, of course, be able to hear the crowd, which is massive for this event, honestly. We have a huge crowd here sitting down to watch a competitive card game, which is fantastic.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, all right, guys. And it looks like our second game is ready to go. So let's go ahead and jump into it here, and we'll see what deck Trump ends up running with.
Well, the Druid is down. He's got a Priest and a Mage to get back into this. What are we going to see from him? What do you think? Against this Paladin deck, I'm thinking Mage. I really am at this point.
I absolutely agree with you. His Mage deck can use quite a bit of damage right now, and there it is. Okay, so let's actually talk about this Mage deck. This Mage deck is entitled Add Fuel. So it starts right off Frostbolts, Blood Mage Thalnos, so we can get that extra power.
There's the Thalnos right there, and he gets the coin as well, so he can coin right into that one. I can't imagine he's going to toss that from his opening hand. The other stuff, maybe not so much. I think he tosses his Fireball, and maybe his Dark Iron Dwarf. I'd probably hold on to the Yeti because it's a really good solid drop regardless. Dark Iron Dwarf earlier kind of relies on having a creature that you can really buff that will actually be useful, as opposed to Artosis, who is going to mulligan his entire hand.
That's right. True Silver Champion is really, really nice, and sometimes it is worthy of including in your opening hand just to ensure that you get it. But if you have no board presence, no early cards or anything like that, it's better just to cycle those out. Now, Trump is making his decisions right now. I agree with you on the Chillwind Yeti. Chillwind Yeti is awesome because it has 5 health. It can absorb not just the Argent Commander that we saw before, but it can absorb any number of 4-drops. So that is an extremely valuable card.
All right, let's see the mulligan. So a Bloodsail Raider, Imp Master, and Argent Protection. Not a terrible opening hand there by Artosis, honestly. It's fine. Obviously, Bloodsail Raider is a pretty standard creature, but it gets better if there's a weapon out. Now, of course, there's not going to be one at this particular stage, so he's just basically playing a 2-3. And the mad trash talking is coming out right here by Artosis.
Yeah, clearly, these guys are the worst-mannered players by far, obviously.
For those of you who don't know, that is the most offensive thing you could possibly say with the emote system in Hearthstone.
Yes, it is a very mannered system. So let's see, he did, interesting choice, as Trump actually decided not to coin Blood Mage Thalnos. Blood Mage Thalnos, he wants to be able to reserve it, at least it looked like it first, for the spell damage, but Blood Mage Thalnos is so nice just because even if it gets killed out, even if it gets sent away, it still gets replaced with another card. Yeah.
It's kind of like a weird loot hoarder in the sense that it's got the reason why it's 1/1 instead of 2/1 like the loot hoarder is it's got +1 spell power.
That's right.
Ultimately, early game, that's not necessarily that helpful, but he's still a really good card to play because of that card draw and because he's useful in a lot of different situations. But like played as a general card, he's not necessarily the best, but that should work pretty well. So the 2/3s right out here for Artosis. I mean, he could just go straight for the Imp Master and then get rid of Thalnos immediately, but that is going to give a card advantage to Trump if he does that.
Yeah, I still think the benefit benefits are worth it, though, because there are a lot of powerful spells inside of the mage deck that we see here from Trump.
You absolutely can't leave the mage deck alone, not with that. And Artosis doesn't know what's in it either. We do, and we know that stuff like Arcade Missiles, which benefits from very early Blood Mage Thalnos, it's not in the deck. He's got a bunch of Frostballs. Out comes the Value Yeti.
That's right, and this Yeti, of course, would be able to trade with everything that's on the board
Everything that's
right
on the
now.
board. That's why it's the Value Yeti.
Yes.
It's absolutely fantastic. A lot of people ignored this very early on in Hearthstone, and Trump was actually the one to popularize it, really, by saying, look, it costs 4 mana, it's 4/5. The way that stats are kind of built in the current set of cards that we've got, this guy will trade really, really well.
Yes.
He's hard to get rid of. He's a real pain. And even though he has no special abilities, he's a very powerful card to play.
And if you don't take him out right now, he's going to start trading individually with every one of those valuable minions. That Master's gone next turn. Then it's going to be the Pirate right after that.
I wonder if he'd burn Inequality just to do that. It's a possibility. But
yeah, actually, considering he's sitting on 2 and he knows that he has confirmed that he has it for the later part of the game, I actually don't think that's too bad of an idea.
Yeah. Getting the Sword of Justice out right now would slow him down a little bit too much. So there you go. Now he's going to trade the Imp for the Yeti. There we go. And he's going to be able to tickle his opponent just a little bit there with 2/1s. Unfortunately, Equality is also going to kill out his Imp Master, which is why it's not the best. And he wasn't able to use his Imp Master alongside his Sword of Justice. So it's not ideal. And the Imp Master unceremoniously explodes.
That's right. Now, Trump's mage deck is not just your typical AoE spell deck. It's not full of Flame Strikes. It's not full of the Arcane
Flame Strikes in that deck.
You're right.
Flame Strike is actually something that the current meta says you don't take it because everyone expects you to take it.
Correct.
So people are saying, oh, no, there's going to be Flame Strikes. But no, there's actually not in the deck. Fairy Dragon comes out. Really interesting card, that one, because it's a 3/2, but you can't directly target it with spells or hero powers. True Silver Champion, on the other hand, is very good at targeting it. So will he go for the True Silver Champion, or will he go Sword of Justice into either an Argent Protector, which wouldn't make a huge amount of sense with what he's got on the board, or into an Initiate, which would become a 2/2 minion, which is also pretty fine.
And I'm looking at the Paladin deck here from Artosis, and there are no Hammer of Wraths, just to point out. So he doesn't have that 3 direct damage anyway to be able to deal with anything. So there we go. Sword of Justice, of course, it is, for those of you who are new to Hearthstone, it is a 3-mana 1/5 weapon that states that whenever you play a minion, you decrease 1 durability from the Sword of Justice, and it gives your minion 1/1, or +1/+1 that you just summoned.
Yeah, and because it's got high durability, a lot of players have elected to start using it to swing at weak minions, because they're okay with losing one of those durability in order to take a minion off the board, because that is viewed as a little bit more valuable. All right, well, Artosis is sitting on a good amount of options, but Azure Drake just came on the field, and that gives card advantage there to Trump, who has not taken too much damage yet. He's in a much better position. It's not snowballing out of his control in the way that it did previously. So Defender of Argus is a possible play, but it's not an amazing one.
Well, and Artosis has a decision to make right now. I think he's correctly predicted what kind of deck this is. He was controlling the board pretty well. He knew that this wasn't just the super spell-heavy mage deck, so he's been slowly kind of pushing his advantage on the board and not just throwing creatures out like we saw in the last game. That being the case now, there is a possibility to do something like throw up Defender of Argus and then just have the Azure Drake Suicide into those. No, he's actually going to get rid of the Sword of Justice and just True Silver Champion out this Azure Drake right now. I
absolutely agree with that decision, honestly. He needs that 4/4 out immediately before it benefits anything. Because bear in mind, that's also got spell power on it as well, which could be a nightmare. He doesn't know exactly what spells his opponent's got. So I agree with that. Yes, he burned his Sword of Justice a bit early, but it made more sense against the deck that he's up against. All right, so that now leaves Trump in a situation where he's got nothing on the board. He's not up against particularly strong minions, but there's a good number of them, and they're going to be a bit of a pain to remove. He's been a little bit unlucky not to pull up Blizzard so far. He's got 2 of them. A Blizzard would be reasonably useful here. Not amazing because there's a Divine Shield out, and that guy's 3/3. If he'd been able to keep his Azure Drake alive, it would have been fantastic. But as it stands, he's going to have to start getting rid of stuff. Now, Frostbolt is going to let him get rid of that 3/3 very easily. That recently got changed to a 2-mana spell as opposed to a 3. It's going to bring out an Acolyte of Pain as well, which is a good choice against what's on the board here.
That's right, because it's you want to really reserve True Silver Champion. A Tyrian Forging. We'll talk about that in a second. So True Silver Champion, you really want to be able to swing away at 4 health minions that also do a fair bit of attack as well, just so you can clear the board very efficiently. The problem is right now that Acolyte of Pain draws cards every time it takes damage, so you want to be able to kill it with one fell swoop. So Artosis has the decision. Does he go right after that Acolyte of Pain and give up the 4 damage and clear the board and make sure his opponent only draws 1 card, or does he take it out in a little bit more piecemeal fashion and give his opponent 2 cards?
Yeah, it's a difficult idea. I can't imagine he's going to want to allow Trump to extend his card advantage any more than it already is. But he doesn't want to leave the Acolyte of Pain on the board either. If he does, then what Trump's going to start to be able to do is he's actually going to start attacking his own minion. He's going to use his Fire Blast to do damage to the Acolyte of Pain. Every time it takes a hit, the Acolyte of Pain causes a card to be drawn.
Now, he could always, like, there's crazy weird plays he could do here, too.
Yeah,
like, he could actually, like, Equality and then just take it out for one.
I maybe
and then
would
reserve
go,
the True Silver Champion.
I'd maybe go Defender of Argus, which buffs that up to 3/3. Use the Divine Shield, kill that in one hit. I mean, you can silence it if you feel like you really need to, but ultimately you would want to hold on to that Spellbreaker for something a little bit more potent than that.
Yeah, and the Defender of Argus is not bad right now, but of course, if Artosis decides to do that, he doesn't know his opponent's deck. He doesn't know if there's Flame Strikes in there or not, and this does set him up for a pretty bad Flame Strike if he were to actually use all this. No, he uses the True Silver Champion on the
He values his Divine Shield more. Yeah, it's as simple as that. And that is the correct thing to do against a mage, because if a Blizzard comes out, or indeed a Flame Strike, as you were talking about, since the mana, he's got the mana now, Trump will be sitting on 7 mana. If Flame Strike were to happen, that would have wiped the board entirely. As it stands, there are no Flame Strikes in the deck. Artosis, of course, doesn't know that, but leaving that Divine Shield up allows that to survive the Flame Strike. So I think he made the right decision in that respect. And now he's got a great board. The question is, what can Trump bring out? Still no Blizzards coming out of that deck.
Right.
Still nothing really big enough to justify a Polymorph. He can get good value creatures out on the board, but as we've seen from Artosis, he'll rapidly start to apply that pressure in a big way.
And it looks like we're just going to see a Harvest Golem with the Defender of Argus. Yep. That's going to make that Harvest Golem into a 3/4 with Taunt, which means that none of the creatures that are on the board right now for Artosis can 1-for-1 that.
All right, Tyrian Fordring is available to play if he wants to play it right now. And honestly, aside from, I would say maybe a Silence there, he can still go Sword of Justice and go for an Initiate after that. So that would work okay. I was maybe expecting him to hold on to it, but he does want to silence that. That knocks out the Taunt, the Death Rattle, and everything else. So that is an absolutely fantastic thing to do there. That's now a 5/4. Trump is in, again, a lot of trouble. This deck is incredible. Right here from Artosis. It's incredibly good.
I've got to admit, though, he's made the right decision every time, though. It's, a part of it is the deck you put together, but we've got to give a lot of credit here to just pure Artosis' playstyle, because he is playing this methodically, he is playing this well, he's always made the right decision, and now, given what we saw out of Trump's cards, he needs a Blizzard or bust right now.
He really, really does, and even if he does get a Blizzard, that's only going to delay the inevitable. Bear that one in mind. Tyrian Fordring still... There's the Blizzard. He top decks what he needs.
Okay, so he can ping the Divine Shield out, or he can actually just Blizzard right now, run into it with the Defender of Argus, start taking things out, or he can just reserve his minions back for a little while, continue to buff them. He's got options right now.
It's going to keep him alive, thank God. That's what he needed, because otherwise he was going to take lethal damage next turn. Blizzard isn't going to kill everything, it's going to kill a good amount, but more importantly, it also freezes the remaining minions in place so they can't attack next turn, which gives him the chance to start to turn the game around. And let's be honest, massive card advantage in favor of Trump here. If he can clear that board, and if he can stay alive, he's in a good spot. But we know what's in that hand. We know there's a Tyrian Fordring hanging around. And even if that thing dies, if it doesn't get silenced, then it can end up giving the Ashbringer to Artosis, and then he is just going to absolutely destroy it. But we know what's in Trump's hand.
Bingo, Polymorph.
Exactly. So it would be an unwise idea, and I think Artosis knows that. He knows, oh, the Mage's got like 8 cards. There must be a Polymorph in there somewhere. I can't risk playing something like Fordring, because Polymorph is the one card that absolutely neutralizes it.
That's absolutely right. And unless we see something else absolutely ridiculous in here, that Polymorph's actually not going to come out. So Trump's doing a nice job of reserving that for now. So let's start doing a little bit of math. If he pings the 3/3 with Divine Shield, which he is doing, then Blizzards, he'll be able to run into a couple of creatures right afterwards, and even be able to get out that 5/4 Spellbreaker if he so desires. And it looks like that's what he's going to go for.
So he's going to trade that over right there. So he's looking at the Sword of Justice and thinking, what's going to come out here? I'm obviously trading the 3/3 for the 5/2 is absolutely the right decision. All right. So Trump has pretty much cleared that board for the most part. Consecrate, that is not really going to help him. He's got no minions to play with the Sword of Justice, so he's relying on Initiates only. He really doesn't want to risk playing Fordring because he knows his opponent has a Polymorph possibly, but Fordring
he has no other
play.
I mean, that's a problem.
He has nothing else to play. So he's got to kind of take that risk. Fordring is now on the field, and now he's about to cry.
Yeah, watch what happens here. The Polymorph, of course, is a 4-mana card, which turns any minion into a 1/1 sheep, and then he can follow that right up with his hero power and blast that down. So there goes the Polymorph.
Oh, dear.
Forging is out.
That is a golden sheep.
Yes.
By which, that's the way that you get the golden fleece, obviously.
Oh, clearly, yes. There we have, so 1-1 sheep. We still have that Sword of Justice sitting on 1-3 right now. Let's go ahead. The golden sheep, I love the animation in the background. Let's go ahead and take a look at Artosis' side here in a second, just see what he drew into. Looks like he's just going to reinforce now. That is going to, of course, proc that one more time. And it is a true silver champion.
All right, okay. Well, that's pretty damn good, because if he's able to get his opponent down to low health, he's going to do that. He's going to go right into the true silver champion and say, I am not afraid of you. I'm going to rush you down. Bear in mind, the Consecrate is in his hand right here.
Yes.
So that's a little bit of extra guaranteed damage. Trump's going to make this happen now. He's got to get that board clear. He's got to get those creatures out. And Trump knows he's in a bit of trouble here. He does have that Blizzard, so he can wipe that out. But here's the thing. True Silver Champion's got one more swing.
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, I think
it.
he's dead. He's got... No, he's... does Blizzard affect minions only, right?
I mean, he can potentially Azure Drake and try and draw a card to get out of this, but with the cards that he has right now, he cannot win the game. He has to be able to find another. He has to be able to find another card.
Yeah, that I think is going to be very true indeed. Azure Drake is coming out. He's going to have to play for a lot of the cards. Lou Hoarder is not the card that he really needed there, and that, I think, is going to be that. That True Silver Champion is just there, and there's nothing else in his deck that's going to keep him alive. GG, ladies and gentlemen, 2-0 for Artosis.
Artosis is rolling right now. This Paladin deck is just unstoppable, and that does mean that Trump is going to be down to his third and final deck, which is that Priest deck, entitled What's Mine, or What's Yours is Mine.
Well, he saw that Tyrion Fordring go down to a polymorph. I wonder if he's going to be hoping that gets played again and then be able to use it against his opponent. So, the Priest deck. We know what's in that Priest deck. It's a nasty deck. It's probably the strongest deck that Trump's got. It's a little more specialized than his other decks, a little bit less generic, but can it work against this? Potentially. The problem with the Priest mind control decks is that, generally speaking, you want to grab the most powerful creature you can get.
Yes.
In a lot of the Paladin decks we're seeing coming out here in this tournament, there aren't all that many powerful creatures. Tyrion Fordring is there, but it is entirely possible that Artosis will elect not to play Tyrion Fordring at all against a Priest deck because there's too much of a risk of a mind control coming out.
Yep, that's absolutely right. So we're going to have this third game here in just a bit. And I've got to say, we were speculating before this one, well, we think the Mage deck is going to match up a little bit better. He's got pressure in that deck. He can get in a little damage.
He got unlucky. Let's be entirely frank. That Blizzard came too little too late. He'd already taken a lot of damage, and his opponent had already got into a good position where the Blizzard wouldn't kill everything. So if it had been able to wipe out a bunch of smaller minions and then given momentum back to Trump, that would have been absolutely fine. But he didn't get it, and that's just the nature of the card game. You could just sometimes draw the wrong cards. So, we will see what this Priest deck has up its sleeve. And it's going to have something pretty incredible. We're going to have to see a reverse all kill from Trump to make his way through here. Artosis would be so happy to go to the finals, having only shown one deck.
Now, we are ready for our third game. But first, I got to ask our audience, does anyone think that Trump can get back into this and reverse all kill? Looks like the crowd is behind Trump, so let's get into the game. It's game number 3 and what could be our last game of this first semifinal.
Well, little speculation has to be made here, frankly. The Priest is the only thing remaining for Trump, and Artosis is sitting pretty on this Paladin deck that is currently 5-0 in this tournament. It is one of the strongest Paladin decks I have ever seen, and it's backed up by essentially flawless decision-making there from Artosis.
Yeah, I mean, he has not missed a beat. There has never been a play that he's made that I thought to myself and went, no, I don't actually think. No, he's been perfect. He's been flawless. Now, of course, we speculated before this that, of course, Artosis would just love to win something, a tournament at BlizzCon at some point in his career. May as well be a Hearthstone one, huh?
Yeah, just winning anything would be great for him. Good Lord in heaven. What a hand. That is not going to really help him too much, but it's an amusing hand regardless. Ysera, one of the, arguably the best legendary in the game. It's really between that and Ragnaros right now, I view as the best legendary card, is in his hand.
Really?
Yeah.
Ooh, I like Blood Mage Thalnos, but
Blood Mage Thalnos is okay, but Rag is ridiculous. Rag,
it is.
The thing about Rag is you play it and then it kills something immediately before your opponent can even do anything. Ysera's great as well, but obviously that's not going to help him in the other game. An entire mulligan right here, and obviously for Artosis, his hand was just awful. There's nothing he was going to be able to make work out of that whatsoever.
I've got to say, though, this is the only thing that's been a tiny bit questionable for me on Artosis' side, because those Argent Protectors, especially when you are playing second, you have the coin at your advantage. It's very easy if you draw into another 2 2-drop to be able to just throw up, let's say a Knife Juggler or something like that. Then turn 2, you throw up a Argent Protector, you're able to hold on to it, and you're totally fine. Now, there are a couple of considerations here. Obviously, this being a priest deck, Mr. Trump is going to have availability to a lot of removal. And we see in his deck, he's got 2 Shadow Word Pains.
Yeah, he certainly does. Shadow Word Pain, 2 Shadow Word Pains and a Shadow Word Death, which is actually what every priest deck we've seen has gone. They don't generally grab too many Shadow Word Deaths because they're a little bit situational, and the current meta doesn't focus around big creatures because of Big Game Hunter, because of Shadow Word Death. Ragnaros, the Golden Fire Lord, is sitting in the hand right there.
But the problem is not only does he have that Ragnaros, he also has a Mind Control, and he has 2 8-mana cards at this point in the game, and that's not what he wants.
Yeah. All right, so we're most likely going to see a Bloodsail Raider come out here immediately. That trades very nicely for that, and obviously playing the Argent Protector right now would be a tad bit wasteful, which is probably the reason, I think, in Artosis' mind why he tossed it in the first instance.
Yeah, no,
because
I understand.
You're basically relying on top-decking a creature that you can actually play, and if you don't do that, then you end up having to play it on its own. And a 2/2 for 2 without using that Divine Shield battle cry is ultimately something that most players just loathe to do. Sometimes you're forced into it, but you hate to do it.
Right. That's absolutely right. So, yeah, I agree with you. No, it looks like he's even going to save that Pirate for a little while there, and he's actually just going to throw out the Recruit for now. So he throws out Well Matt, and then Justice demands Retribution right afterwards.
It does indeed. It always demands Retribution. We're going to see Shattered Sun Cleric, absolutely the right buff, no question about that. Goes into that. That gives a nice, solid early board advantage to Trump right there.
No, what's really nice, though, for Trump right now, even though Artosis hasn't spent any cards and he's holding back a lot right now and he does have card advantage, on Trump's side, he's already got those guaranteed cards that he knows he wants in the later part of this game, and he's done a good job through the early part of not expending too much mana, not too many cards, and he's been able to hold on to board presence.
Yes, and that's very important. If he can hold on to that board presence when those big threats come out, that's going to be a big problem for Artosis to actually deal with. Okay, so what's he got? His possibilities are a little limited here. He's sitting on 3 mana and the coin. So we could see 2 creatures come out. We could see Bloodsail into coin, into Argent Protector, but it may not be what he wants to do. We can coin Consecration, but it will only kill 1 creature. It will weaken the other and let a 3 damage basically go through next turn. Equality's a possibility, but he's got no follow-up for it.
Right.
So ultimately, he would leave himself open to 5 damage if he did that. So let's see what he does.
Wow.
Just initiate and end turn. All right. So definitely keeping his cards close to his chest here.
Well, don't forget, he does have 2 Lay on Hands in this deck as well.
True. And we've really seen those. Kill that deck.
Yeah, we've seen
had to use his Lay on Hands.
Exactly.
I don't think at any point during this tournament. It's been that ridiculous. All right, Trump's sitting on a lot of nice stuff. So he's got his Power Word Shield, which might be a good play here. It gets him card draw and +2 health. He's going to use it on his more powerful creature, which I do like.
It's a good choice.
Yep, I absolutely do like that. And a Shadow Word Pain comes into his hand as well there. He's just going to trade that. Why waste the removal cards, right? There's the heal comes up, and
Great
Trump
turn.
is in. Yeah, fantastic turn for Trump. Really, really good.
Absolutely made a very efficient use, drew a card out of it, only expended 1 of his own, healed his minions back up to full, and now he's got a pretty impressive board. And the nice part, too, is that this gets things out of the range of True Silver Champion. This would have been a pretty easy call, or it could have been.
Just slaughter the 3/5,
Yeah.
but it can't really do that right now because it won't kill the 3/5.
That's
something
absolutely
to bear
right.
in mind. He can't do a coin, even if he did this coin combination, which is coin equality into Consecration for a guaranteed board wipe, that's still a lot of cards expended to when he killed 2. So it's ultimately not maybe the best option. So he does swing for the 2/3 and kills it, and then ends his turn immediately, which I think was probably the right call there.
All right. Well, Novice Engineer pops up right now, and he's actually just going to go straight for Sylvanas. Interesting, because there is a potential for this to get killed off and not actually be able to use its Death Rattle and steal a minion.
Ouch. Aldo Peacekeeper just comes out there, actually, which is a way of doing that. I wonder what we're going to see from... We may see Equality. I mean, it seems like the best option, because that would allow him to kill off Sylvanas Windrunner. Will we see the Consecration, though, instead, because he doesn't want to take the damage? Yes, he's going to do the combo. All right, nice shutdown. That's out of the way. Artosis gets rid of that before that Death Rattle is able to do anything.
That's a great play. So for those of you who are wondering, of course, Sylvanas Windrunner is a 5-mana 5/5 that has Death Rattle, take an opponent's minion at random. So you definitely didn't want to have to deal with that.
Yep.
And right now, honestly, he could use a Brewmaster and draw another card right now.
That's not a terrible idea. It is the value right here.
Yeah, there we go.
Barrel goes out, and yet another will perhaps be played. There we go. So there's yet another card coming through. Nice play there by Trump. Absolutely fine. He's going to be very happy with that. and there's no Consecration left because he just used it, so he can't just wipe the board yet again there. But are we going to see Artosis actually play a minion?
Yeah, I think we're going to here in just a second. There's not much to be able to silence, so Spellbreaker won't be used.
Well,
he could load the board with very cheap minions right now if he wanted to.
I'm thinking, I'm honestly, like, I'm almost thinking Bloodsail, Argent Protector, because the buff on that Bloodsail is going to be ridiculous. Gains attack equal to your weapon. Wham bam, 6-3. There you go. And the Divine Shield to follow that one up as well. It makes it a little bit more difficult to get rid of. Of course, there is a risk that if a Shadow Madness gets top decked here, then this is going to get really messy for Artosis very fast.
Not even Shadow Madness. We do have one Shadow Word Death sitting around as well, which will very quickly deal with the 6-3 with Divine Shield.
Yes, but the Shadow Word Death is not in his hand right now. Shadow Madness is, though.
Yes.
So what he can do with Shadow Madness is he can take control of it and attack. The question is, what would he get? That's still got a Divine Shield on it. Ultimately, the best scenario with the Shadow Madness is you steal an opponent's minion, use it to kill the other minion, but also kill the minion you stole. Because that's basically, you go two for one card, right? It's really solid removal, great on buffed creatures. But that has a Divine Shield on it, which makes it a little bit more difficult. You've got to get rid of that Divine Shield first, because otherwise it won't kill it. And even then, there's nothing on the board which is strong enough to actually kill off that 6-3.
Yeah, but to be honest, I mean, we could see a couple of things here. I mean, we could run the Novice Engineer into that the Pirate, then we'll throw the Argent Commander out there, trade with it, and Holy Smite away the 2/2 Argent Protector. That would clear board and retain an Argent Commander out there, which is not a terrible play.
No, it's definitely not the worst thing ever. He's going to ping that, and yes, there we go. Argent Commander comes out. That's going to charge with its Divine Shield and immediately remove the 6-3. There's the Holy Smite for exactly that. Putting Trump in a good spot. Yeah, that was absolutely fine. Avenging Wrath comes off the top of the deck right here. Not really one he necessarily wants to be using right now. It's not the worst thing ever, certainly. But right now, he's sitting on a situation where he's got to deal with a 4-3. What has he got which can deal with it? The only thing he's actually got right now which will kill it is the Avenging Wrath. And that's still a little random. It might not. We've, of course, seen that in previous games where Avenging Wrath actually missed it, didn't do the 3 damage it needed. Statistically, it's likely that it will, but you can't trust that at all. Aldor Peacekeeper would take it down to a 1-3 and effectively remove the threat from the board.
Exactly, and I think we can see an Argent Protector here in a second just to drop a shield on top of that 3-3 in a moment.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, because there's not too much else that's out there. He can do that, and he can throw another Recruit out at the same time. Just looking back at our Priest deck right now, I mean, he's got a lot of individual removal. He's got a lot of card draw, and obviously has all of those mind control cards, but not a lot that's going to be able to significantly impact that board otherwise, so this is a great play from Artosis.
Yep, all right, Artosis regains board control after struggling in the early game here. However, we're getting to the point where crazy things can be played. Mind control is available. This is the nice thing, though. Youthful Brewmaster is available.
Yes.
That's going to remove that Aldor debuff. It's going to allow him to play it with a shield with charge yet again. However, he also has things like Shadow Madness. He has a mind control, but I wouldn't use it yet on anything that's there. It's not really worthwhile. He also has a solid creature in the form of an Injured Blade Master, which is surprisingly good value, especially in a Priest deck. So ultimately, he's going to be able to get rid of a lot of the stuff that's currently on this board.
Okay, well, I mean, let's see what his choices are going to be. Just taking a look at things. Yeah, I mean, he could Youthful Brewmaster and get the Argent Protector back, but that's not great for him.
It's
he could
very
actually
heavy mana cost. That's the problem. Like, yes, you can do that, but it's the only thing he can do this turn.
Right. I mean, not necessarily to even play the Argent Commander again, though. Like, he can ping out one of the 1/1s, throw the Youthful Brewmaster and pull back the Argent Commander, load up the board with an Injured Blade Master, and heal it up a bit just to make sure it stays around for a little while. And then he could play the Argent Commander again on another turn.
He's thinking about Shadow Madness here, and it's okay, but again, the most powerful creature on the board is, of course, that, but he can pop it. I mean, this will get rid of it. There's the Shadow Word Pain, which goes through Divine Shield, of course, and destroys it completely. Shadow Madness for a 2/2 here. There we go. So he takes control of that, runs that into that. And
there it is.
That's pretty good. And then, he Brewmasters the other creature and steals it.
That's awesome.
Very nice.
Well done.
I have actually never seen that done. That is really cool.
Okay, all right. So now the options for Artosis are quite a bit limited. He has the Tyrion sitting around.
I'm thinking Avenging Wrath here. He can't play the Tyrion against a priest with 5 cards.
Absolutely
That's
not.
just insanity. Avenging Wrath seems like the best play right now. You can get 2 creatures off the board almost guaranteed. So that seems like the way to do it. The silencers are not going to help anybody.
He could potentially take... Oh, here comes the Avenging Wrath, and he will be able to load up with
here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7... Not the best. Not the best.
Now,
it leaves one alive.
2 Youthful Brewmasters have already been used in this
Yes.
game, so it's not like that Argent Commander's going to come back.
No.
It's not like it's going to be fully buffed back up or anything.
Admit it. He's thinking of Ysera. He's thinking of Ysera. Here it is. Clears the board. Ysera is out. This is a really fantastic situation for Trump. He pulls a Nightmare 5/5 at the net. Basically, it is a gigantic power overwhelming card.
For free.
Yeah. Not only that, I mean, you can actually use it for removal as well in certain situations, but I mean, it's incredibly powerful. All right, so silencing Ysera here is a pretty good idea because Ysera every turn is going to pull a dream card. All the dream cards are great. You will silence Ysera, okay, but that's still a 4/2 dragon on the field, 4/12 dragon on the field, which is going to trade incredibly well, and we know there's a Ragnaros. There's still a rag there.
Oh, geez. All right, so this is going to be a little bit uncomfortable. Now, of course, Trump can start to just... Ysera doesn't do anything else, so he just wants to start trading out minions.
Yeah, and kill a 4/3 finish immediately with that as a possibility.
He could even kill the Knife Juggler if he wants to, just to make sure that it's not able to do any extra damage.
Yeah, so he's got 10 mana. I'm thinking of what potentially he actually ends up doing with this. That thing has a lot of health. There's the charge coming out. I assume he's going to use that against the 4/3 if he wants to play that.
Yes.
He does have that Dark Iron Dwarf buff available, which would actually put that Ysera up to 6, which is quite nice. I assume he's going to trade that for the 4/3 there. That makes the most sense. And then he could Argent Protect it again after he's eliminated the Spellbreaker, which would put it right back into a really good spot there. You don't really need to put a Divine Shield on Ysera because it can take so many hits it doesn't even matter.
All right, well, Argent Commander comes in, takes out the 4/3 Spellbreaker. Ysera takes out the Knife Juggler, and we have a pretty clear board once again.
Yeah, is he going to play a minion? Oh, yeah, right. He's thinking about it. He's thinking about Divine Shielding again against that 4/3, but I think the Blade Master is the better play here.
Blade Master is a good play. I don't know. I mean, I like Argent Protector and then healing Ysera up as well, to be totally honest, because that's going to give him reserve that injured Blade Master for a little while. I think both plays are fine. I don't think it really matters right now, but I don't know. I think I go with the Argent Protector route.
He's going to heal himself, and then he will end his turn. All right, so we're not going to see that. We're not going to see that Argent Protector out just yet. An Imp Master, not really going to help him that much. Lay on Hands is used for the first time. 7 healing and 3 cards from that. Gets a True Silver Champion, but he can't do anything else this turn other than summon an Initiate. It's a very expensive spell.
That's true, but it was still a reasonable draw for him, to be honest. I mean,
it was okay, yeah.
Sword of Justice is okay right now. I mean, he would have loved it later on when he was throwing out a lot of cheap creatures, but mostly that True Silver Champion is going to give him a lot more options going on.
Yeah, that's very true. It's still not going to kill Ysera. Ysera is going to be sticking around for a while here, but let's see where this can go. Bear in mind that Nightmare is in the hand, so if he's able to get his opponent down to a reasonable amount of health, he can do a big surprise attack there. He's just going to remove those from the board. Loot Hoarder comes out. Great. That's a great time to play it. Blade Master comes out. Yet again, great time to play it. And he heals up his Argent Commander for 1 instead of electing to heal up the Blade Master there.
And he's still saving that Argent Protector around for a while. And honestly, yes, Artosis has cards available to him. He's got more cards on his opponent.
Great, though.
No. I mean, and the problem
having 2 Defenders of Argus with nothing on the field, and what are you going to do? He could go for Sword of Justice into Imp Master, then maybe use his Defender of Argus, but that is not an ideal situation.
No, absolutely not. Although it is reasonable, I will say.
I mean, he's going to do something. He can't. I mean, he already knows he can't play the Tyrion safely because he hasn't seen a single mind control come out yet,
and he's not going to concede right now, obviously.
No,
so
absolutely not. True Silver Champion comes out, so that the Blade Master's going to go down immediately. Yeah, and you might think, well, why kill the Blade Master instead of that? Because the Blade Master has the potential to be healed higher. The other guy, not so much. That 4/3 is always going to be a 4/3 unless it gets buffed. So he gets rid of that, and that leaves him with 6 mana available. I don't think he's going to want to burn his True Silver Champion yet, so he wants to keep a hold of Sword of Justice. I think he's just going to leave it. Yeah.
Because if he throws out the Imp Master, it gets killed once.
It gets killed immediately.
Yeah, and it receives no value whatsoever.
Yeah.
This, at least, what he can do, because he was able to clear the board a little bit, he can come back, kill the Argent Protector. Ysera is still going to get in and do a little bit of damage, but then he can load the board up a little bit better, whether it's just Imp Master and Defender of Argus, or throws the Sword of Justice up there and then starts comboing out between
Make no mistake, though, by the way, guys. You're looking at the health and you're thinking, oh, Artosis is slightly ahead. No, he isn't. Not even close. The advantage is clearly in favor of Trump right now, and Trump has a great amount. This is a rag time. This is time for Ragnaros,
yes, I
feel. Here it is. Rag is on the field.
So Ragnaros is an 8/8 for 8 that cannot attack, and it deals 8 damage to a random enemy at the end of your turn, and he gave it Divine Shield.
And here it is. You have failed me, Executus.
Oh boy, Avenging Wrath isn't going to do anything here, unfortunately, and I think that is pretty much going to be it.
That's gonna be game. I gotta think. I mean, I think maybe he desperation plays Tyrion Fordring, and then he gets mind controlled in a final insult. But that's Avenging Wrath really isn't going to help him too much here. Even if he can't even kill the rat because it's got a divine shield on it. Oh man, I've got to say, Trump is coming to this. Artosis came to steal the secrets, and Ragnaros is not happy about it.
No.
This is not going to work out well for Artosis at all. I think he is ultimately incredibly dead here. Even if you the worst thing about it is, even if you silence Ragnaros, it becomes an 8/8 that can kill you anyway.
Yeah.
That's why it's a fantastic card.
All right, well, just taking a look at things. The nice thing for Artosis, though, is that he does have a 2-0 advantage right now. It looks like it's going to go to 2-1. I don't think anyone's going to debate that, but he still has 2 decks at his disposal, and we were taking a look at those before.
Some of them are really strange.
Yeah, he's got a Warrior deck and a Priest deck, which are actually very interesting. I'd like to see the Priest mirror matchup, to be totally honest, because they're such different decks.
They are really strange.
Yeah, but that Warrior deck would be pretty interesting too. So he's just, Artosis is just kind of considering his options right now. He really doesn't have a lot that he can do, unfortunately. Looks like he throws out the Imp Master.
Yep.
Yeah, and that alone is not going to cut it.
I don't think so. This is probably not keeping him alive. It's possible if Ragnaros ends up hitting the wrong thing, it's possible that he lives another turn.
Yes.
But ultimately, things could turn around very quickly in Hearthstone, so you have to be a little bit careful about what you do. He's thinking about attacking, but of course that is, whatever he attacks is going to hurt him badly. So he needs to watch out for that.
Well, I mean, he probably takes out the Argent Protector here because it doesn't damage his health, and that way the Argent Protector can't just bludgeon its way through the 2/2 recruit that's sitting there. Yeah, it looks like that's what's going to happen.
Definitely the best move there for him. But Ragnaros can still kind of just bypass this nonsense entirely.
Yes.
We'll see. I mean, he stays alive ultimately for a turn here, but with a Shadow Word Pain out in the field, he's thinking about Nightmare as well. He's thinking about possible mind control. Shadow Word Pain comes out and instantly pop the 2/5. That's dead. And he's buffing up Ysera here, and this is going to be nasty. A Nightmare on Ysera for 11-12. Down he goes.
There's nothing more satisfying than using your own dream card on Ysera. And there we have a 2-1 still in favor of Artosis at the moment, but Trump is battling his way back.
I told you, I was looking at that Priest deck and like, that is just nasty. There's so much available in that Priest deck. Didn't even have to break out Mind Control. No. Of course, Artosis doesn't know it's there, but he has to assume it's there. It's a Priest. Why would you not take Mind Control? This is a card, by the way, that they announced yesterday they would be nerfing.
That's
it's actually going all the way up to 10 mana to make it even more expensive because it is such a good card.
Yeah.
But as it stands right now, you've got to know, you've got to play around the idea that Mind Control is in the deck. And that could be a real nightmare for a lot of people. So what do you think is coming out next?
Well, as we mentioned before, we've already seen the Paladin deck, and we have a Warrior and a Priest. Now, the Priest deck for Artosis is considerably different than the one we're seeing right here. It uses, we didn't see any Northshire Clerics, for example, in the Priest deck from Trump. Northshire Cleric is a 1/3 for 1 that says that whenever you heal a minion, you draw a card. So it's a very card draw focused deck, a very gaining health deck, control-based
really
deck.
Card. Like, one of the best in the game right now, especially since it recently got taken down to 1 mana instead of 2.
All right.
So it's fantastic.
All right, guys. Well, we're actually already ready for game number 4. So who thinks that Trump can tie it up right now?
I certainly think so. It's a definite possibility. That Priest deck is really, really strong. But he has got to reverse all kill with it. This is the only deck he currently has left. Artosis has now got a peek at what was in it. Let's see if he can overcome.
Artosis has that Warrior and Priest at his disposal. The Warrior deck is very fun. We'll describe it if he actually pulls it out. We don't want to give away too much of his tech right now. But I don't know, man. I think both of these decks have a chance. It's the Warrior deck. All right, so this is a deck that's very based around a lot of weapons and a lot of charge. And a lot of minions that continue to do damage to yourself in order to gain up attack. So
that hand. All right, okay. A Gorehowl and an Arcanite Reaper. So as you can see, the Artosis deck is very focused on weapons.
Yes.
We've already got a chance to see that, and that is very true. Warsong Commander, again, one of the best cards of the game, in my opinion. But ultimately, those 2 weapons are probably going bye-bye, I would imagine. And he's thinking about a full mulligan. I wouldn't blame him. And then, of course, Trump is going to have to mulligan a couple of things. Ysera, Argent Commander. Shadow Madness is decent to have in the mid-game. I'm okay with him holding on to that. But ultimately, if he gets to turn 3 and the only minion he's got is a Shattered Sun Cleric, then that's an unfortunate play.
All right, so what's he going to get rid of here? I agree with you that Ysera and Argent Commander at least is going to go away. If he doesn't have any other cheap minions right away, though, you know, Shattered Sun Cleric is fine as a 3/3 body by itself, but he's going to want to make sure that he has a target for it. And it looks like our opponents have locked in. So there we go. Shattered Sun Cleric is the only card out of the 7 kept. We have an Arathi Weaponsmith and a Amani Berserker and an upgrade available for Artosis.
These are pretty good hands for both, honestly. Amani Berserker is always nice, and a Cruel Taskmaster comes out. That's fantastic for him already. So this deck, it's weapon heavy, and it's more of one of the standard warrior decks whereby you rely on 2 things, enrage and weapons. And you combo things like the Cruel Taskmaster with something like the Armani Berserker to trigger enrages and do immense damage. It's got a huge amount of burst and very strong removal. Speaking of strong, Grommash Hellscream, ladies and gentlemen. We might get to see that played. And of course, it's going to take a while for that to come out. But out comes the Armani Berserker, a really solid opener. And the follow-up to that is probably going to be Cruel Taskmaster. However, there is a Shadow Word Pain, so that means he can get rid of that pretty much immediately if he wants to. He's thinking he's going to coin into a 3/3.
I like it.
All right, that's fine. But this Cruel Taskmaster means he's about to get hit for 7.
All right, so because Cruel Taskmaster has a battle cry, deals 1 damage.
He doesn't even need to do it. He just pulls the Fiery Warx. So he can just kill that 3/3 off immediately, and he can hold on to it, and then he could even upgrade the turn after that if he so desires.
Yeah, if he wants to keep it around. Upgrade, of course, it's an option card. If you don't have a weapon equipped, it gives you a 1/3 weapon. If you do have a weapon equipped, it gives that weapon +1/+1.
So it sticks around, it gets just a little bit better. It's a really nice card to have. Ultimately, you generally don't want to play the weapon with it because it's kind of a terrible weapon. It's the worst one in the game, ultimately, but regardless. Fiery Warx is definitely a possibility here. He's thinking about that Cruel Taskmaster play, but he also knows that there's a couple of really awkward things. As a priest, you can actually heal an enraged creature and cancel the enrage, which is a little bit annoying. But he's going to go for that play regardless. This is what happens. Damage is done, buffed 7/2. Strike right at him. There we go. Now that is what I call a little bit of aggro.
That is an impressive amount of damage here. Let's see, Youthful Brewmaster comes onto the battlefield, but that's not going to be enough. Of course, that Shadow Word Pain.
He's going to trade that. Of course he's going to do that. He has to play a second Shattered Sun Cleric without a buff. Very suboptimal. He's probably not too happy about that.
And he's not happy about the 7 damage he just took, too, with basically an empty board state. So Leopard Gnomes are in this deck, of course, because there are 2 1-for-1, which does 2 damage to your opponent as their Death Rattle. So it continues that aggro going forward a little bit. We could see a combo of cards art here. Arathi Weaponsmith, not going to be used for a while. It looks like we're just going to use the 3/2, swing through, take out the Shattered Sun Cleric, and then swing in for 2.
Yep, and there's the Leopard Gnome coming out as well. So that's a really good start for Artosis, honestly. A very good start indeed. He got exactly what he needed to start the early game pressure off, and this deck relies on being able to carry that through. If at any point you sort of lose that momentum and stop being able to do damage, things become problematic. Okay, so he can get rid of the board here if he wants to, but those are his only 2 Shadow Word Pains. Now you might think, oh, well, it's just a 2 cost. But in this case, what we're going to see is the Chillwind Yeti come out, which definitely the right call. In a Rage, however, coming out here as well. He might want to hold on to that for an Enrage card, though.
Now, as we want to point out that we were talking about Warsong Commanders before, and that's a lot of the crux of this deck here for Artosis and a lot of his late game finish ability as well, because it does give all of your other minions charge. And that's the kind of thing that you really want to be able to use a Shadow Word Pain on as you go through the game. There are options for Artosis. He's either going to have to take 4 damage and get rid of his Leopard Gnome and continue to do a little bit more pressure if he wants to clear it without committing additional cards to the board, but it looks like he's considering his options right now between Inner Rage, between Arathi Weaponsmiths even afterwards.
Yeah, certainly. So I think, he's going to just, for the most part, ignore the Yeti right now. He's going into full rushdown mode here. And he just wants to kill his opponent as quickly as possible. Out comes yet another weapon. He may even choose to upgrade that, which would make it a 3/3, which would be a nice idea indeed. He's still got this Inner Rage, but there's no real reason to use that this turn, so he's most likely just going to end his turn at this point here. And he's thinking about upgrading, but no.
And there are no acidic swamp oozes in this deck for our priest Trump, which
really
means
unfortunate. Against a warrior, you really need that stuff, and he doesn't have it. He's already down to under half of his life, and he's not sitting on a lot of healing. The only healing he really has in this deck is his own healing power, which is not that good. It's 2 health at most. So this is a bit awkward. Now, he can, of course, nicely trade the 4/5 to the 3/3 here and then still get another creature out of it. But, of course, he does leave himself vulnerable to be killed by that 2/2 weapon if he does that. So let's see what he decides to remove. There's the Shadow of Pain to get rid of the 3/3. I think that's a much better idea. Then he kills the 2/2, takes 1 less damage, which is nice. But, of course, he doesn't know his opponent is sitting on upgrade. But Injured Blade Master comes out there as well. And that was probably the best turn Trump could have done. Absolutely. That was the right thing to do. But we do have that upgrade card available. So,
okay, and that does mean that the 2/2 weapon that's sitting around won't be able to take out one of those minions. But as you were just suggesting, upgrade, of course, we'll give it +1/+1, and he can start to trade those out very efficiently.
The Frothing Berserker comes out. Every time a minion takes damage, this guy starts to gain power.
Yes.
It's very dangerous. There's the upgrade, 3/3. He is going to rush down. He is going full on for him right now. And honestly, this is the right call. Right? How many taunt cards are in decks with Trump involved? There aren't any. He doesn't like that.
That's right.
And unfortunately, that leaves him vulnerable to this kind of stuff.
All right, well, he can clear the board out, but unfortunately, even in just clearing the board, he's going to take 2 more damage, and there's already 6 damage in reserve here between the 2 attacks from this weapon, so things are getting a little bit bleak for our priest. Now, of course, he can continue to heal himself out.
I would expect Shadow of Pain on the Frothing Berserker pretty much immediately.
Yeah.
I would never, ever let a Frothing Berserker sit on the board like that.
Nope.
If you can remove it for 2 mana, you certainly should remove it for 2 mana. But he's actually going to go for the trade instead. That, I suppose, works too. I wonder what exactly he wants to hold on to that Shadow of Pain for exactly, rather than doing that kind of damage to his Yeti. He's going to play yet another Yeti and heal himself, leaving himself with significant board control. And it also means he keeps his pain for a little bit later.
Now, don't forget, we're starting to get some pretty critical damage numbers here for Trump, too. He's got 12 damage on board now.
This is the problem.
Right.
The Grommash Hellscream in a Rage combination. Yeah? This Blood Cell Raid is already pretty nasty as it is. Basically, next turn, Grommash Hellscream comes out with charge and Inner Rage, enrages, and just kills Trump outright. So that could become a real problem. Doing the math in my head, even if Trump heals, I think he's still in trouble. I think he may just be flat out dead at this point.
Right, so for those of you who are wondering, Grommash Hellscream is actually an 8 mana. It's a 4/9 with charge that gets +6 attack whenever it takes damage. So if you do Inner Rage, now it's all of a sudden doing much more damage. What, 12 damage, I think? So, I mean, he can come across and swing through.
Trump is dead. I mean, there's really no question about it at this point. Because of that, there are no taunts in this deck, or in any of his decks, really.
No.
The Grommash Hellscream and Inner Rage combo will trigger the Enrage. It already has charge, and he will just flat out die. There's no way out of this at all. Artosis absolutely knows it. Sylvanas Windrunner might be nice, but it's not going to do anything because he has no idea what's coming at him right now. It doesn't matter what comes in because Grommash Hellscream is going to come out. Inner Rage is going to come out. Grommash Hellscream is going to murder Trump right now. Out it comes. There it is. 12-8 charge. GG.
And Artosis is your first finalist here at the Innkeeper's Invitational. He has a nice little look on his face right there. Congratulations to Artosis.
Excellent play there by Artosis. Probably low to have to show a second deck right there, but that is a nasty one indeed. He got everything he possibly could have wanted in that draw, and unfortunately, it seems a lack of taunt may have caused a few problems there for Trump because he was rushed down. Artosis wasn't even concerned about dealing with the minions on the board. He just wanted to kill his opponent.
All right, there we have it. Congratulations to our winner there, Artosis. He will be advancing. Of course, he is waiting on the next semifinal that we have to play out, which is going to be Ruckful versus Kriparian.
Yep.